Welcome back, Pirate Crew. It's your captain, Yeehaw Yadam, and we're back with the final video on our road to the Treasure Cup. On this road to Treasure Cup, I've been joined by my friend, Fernando Freeman Fuentes, and this deck is an amalgamation of our hopes and dreams of what we believe is the best deck in the format. You're looking at it and you're just as confused as I am. You look at this and you're like, what the heck? But let me tell you, this law deck, we were kind of just a little worried on how we would approach this video because there's just so much to be said. This deck is so versatile. This leader in general is
This could be like a 1 hour long video.
It definitely could be. I'm gonna try to not have it because dang, that's a whole podcast, brother. But I definitely want it to be an informative video where we can talk about the strengths that Law has and the archetypes that people have seen of Law and what we think that Law can be and can do. So with that being said, Fernando, please take it away as we start this beautiful video on. And where I want us to start is right here, right on this little crutch right here of the 23 Straw Hats, 19 Supernova, and 18 Wano, and why we're playing such a diverse bunch of characters in our deck.
So definitely, if nothing else, I want to go down in history as the one that thought about the ratios a little bit. So definitely, I see like from all the research that I've done, most people tend to gravitate to only two searchers, that being Julie, Bonnie, and Nami, when they construct their law decks most of the time, because they just feel like the deck becomes a little too inconsistent if you add a third searcher in Mononosuke or any type of combination of the three searchers. But I think that that's sort of, self-limiting in a way, because I feel like if you can somehow crack the mathematics behind playing three searchers, that gives you an entire extra one drop and a different dimension of value that you can add to your law deck. And we're going to see that, when it comes to Yamato, the Tappers, the Raizo, things of this nature. But basically, this deck, the way that you do the math for it is every time that you play one of the one drops, or at least the first one that you play that's going to search, that's one less count toward your overall count of Supernovas, Wanos, or Straw Hats. And you also never count Nami because she can't get herself. So with that said, basically what it comes down to is 19 Straw Hat targets is the final number that we got to. 18 Supernovas, and then the last one being 17 Wano Country cards that you can search. And we think that right around this 18 mark is where your searching becomes really consistent. Your second and third searches, they might whiff every so often, but not as much. So overall, definitely maximizing on your searchers and ratios there. And then playing around that sort of schematic is how we decided to, play the cards we decided to play, and we're going to go into those right now.
So basically, where we're at with this deck is, let's talk again. Now let's initiate from a different standpoint, right? So oftentimes I see law decks and they really do not have any form of combo power. Their decks are very fragile, very brittle. They either go all face and have no top end, or go all top end with like the A drop and then really just don't do anything besides that. And if you can out their A drop, it really doesn't do much. Besides the Otamas, I really don't see law decks playing too many 2Ks. So I want to highlight the fact that we're playing 4 Otamas, 4 Usopps, as well as 4 Izos. So we have 12 2Ks, which is again a very large amount of 2K counters, as well as 3 Red Hawks. That eventually leads up to an insane amount. There are very little cards in this deck that are naturally bricks in terms of what I would consider cards that don't have counter. And those cards that do have that are just necessarily our strongest cards that we're going to be flipping over and over and over to potentially value out our opponent. Something else that I really want to talk about is the addition of Jet Pistol. I really fought for Jet Pistol to be in this deck. Now, for a long time, I've been prizing this deck, and the thing that I've been having the most issue, and this is going to sound bananas, the card that has single-handedly destroyed this deck and destroyed me when I'm playing Law is, surprisingly enough, Basil Mihawk. Now, why? Now you're going to think to myself, why Basil Mihawk? Because in conjunction with Okiku's, Straw Sword, Punk Gibson's, things of that nature, my board is never susceptible to not be rested, right? A good Law player, you can argue I can do my turn and then leave my whole board in an unrested position, but that's very tough when there's are cards that they have in their deck that can just interact with me. Izu's, Nekomamushi's, anything of that nature. So once they make that Basil Hawkins, all they have to do is just commit 1 Dawn to him, and he every turn just eats my board. If I ever overcommit, I lose my board. If I undercommit, I lose tempo and I lose the time advantage, and then they just kill me with their leader. And Basil Hawkins facilitated their late game, their early game, did everything for them. And I never found a way to effectively beat that card. So I told Fernando, I'm like, Fernando, we must play pistol.
We need a solution to that
We need a
guy.
solution, and pistol was a very easy and clean answer, right? Because pistol not only deals with Basil Hawkins, in combination with Otama, it can deal with the AK, I mean the A drop in some scenarios, and any sort of top end with that combination. Otama doesn't only
Yeah,
necessarily have to be played once. Well, the cool thing about Law is that you can summon Otama for one, use Law's ability to shambles up the Otama, play the Law, jump something back up, play the Otama back. So we've now -4, and then pistol answers anything. Pistol now becomes a -10k deletion, which is, I
yeah,
can't think of a
and
card.
it's actually crazy because this is the best deck to use. What we like to call Jet Pistol Otama is the combo essentially, in any type of red style variant. And this deck is actually the craziest one at doing it because you can search all of it. You can play Nami, get the Jet Pistol, then you can go Mononosuke, search for the Otama, and then after you do that, you bounce back your Nami. You play the Otama, bounce back Nami to play the Trafalgar Lob. The Lob bounces back the Otama, and then you play her again and play her off of something else, whatever the case may be. But it's basically all the searching that you're doing for those cards actually enable playing those cards right after as well for really cheap amounts of Dawn. So just the combo, as we call it, is super effective in
it,
this
it's
build.
it's it's just super easy to find too, right? Because you're playing 4 Namis. Bonnie can also find Jet Pistol, and then Momo can find Otama. So the probability of you having it is really, really high. Even at a low counts of pistol, you have double searches for it, especially one of the field spell searchers. And then once you have one Otama, she's more than enough, right? You can always recycle her, bounce her up, and that's just the power of Law and the fact that he can do that over and over again. And if you combine Law with the Trafalgar character card, then you're just set. You can play the Otama, and Otama by itself can just answer the A drop, right? So imagine a scenario where they go A drop, suspend, pass, and you're like, cool, Otama the A drop, tap 2 for Law, bounce the Otama, play Law, bounce a Bonnie that you already searched with, play the Otama. Now it's -4k on the A drop. How are you going to sustain my attacks on that A drop? It's almost impossible. You're going to dump your whole hand. Then okay, maybe I don't kill the A drop this turn. But certainly on the next
But
turn, you
it's
won't be
gonna
able to
attack, yeah.
exactly. If I don't kill it this turn, I kill on the next one, and then maybe you're too concerned about me deleting it on the next turn, so you don't even attack me with it, and it stays in a unrested position. And now I'm just saving time. And my deck double dips with Momo, Bonnie, and Nami. So I have the most consistent, most searches, biggest hand size, and we really are just off to the races. So I know we've really talked in circles basically about just how strong this deck is, but let's get actually right into the deck list. So starting off, 4 Otamas. I don't think anyone's going to argue with me. I don't think there's going to be any Law player that's going to argue 4 Otamas.
Cards crazy.
I think trying to do that is a very, very hard job. And then we have 4 Momos. Momo's a little bit controversial, and I really want you to talk about why we're playing 4 Momos. What does Momo
Yeah, so
search? What does he do for you?
Yeah, so very specifically, he gets the tapping cards like Isu and Neko in the matchups where they're relevant. It gets Rizos in the matchup where he's relevant, like the control ones. But most importantly of all, it also makes it so that you can get Yamato a lot more consistently in the red and purple matchups. And Yamato's one of the key cards. Oh, and also in green. One of the key cards that you need for all those matchups because one of the flaws of the generic law deck is that they run out of steam after giving the opponent a lot of resources by attacking their life. That's one of the only ways that the law deck can win, right? So Yamato kind of shores that weakness up by pressuring both hand and life at the same time, kind of like how the green deck does it. But it's so safe to use her in this build, and um, Kazuki Monosuke kind of allows you to search for it and make that plan A in a lot of scenarios. More importantly than that, I think that it's incredibly valuable to have a second, essentially like a second 4 copies of Bonnie in the sense of how Trafalgar's effect works. You can protect the Monosuke by bringing it back to your hand and then summoning a different red payoff card. And in that way, you can double dip, like Yadam loves to say, on those searching effects. So that line of play, I really, really enjoy with Bonnie. So I think that Monosuke, just for that reason, also has a seat at the table. So
Yeah, just the fact that he's a green card, right? Because green is really interesting in Law, right? What are your green cards in Law? You have Bonnie, you have Momo, and then you have the suspenders, and then the top end cards, right? Which is so you don't really have cards that flip into the red cards, if you will,
Yeah.
right? So you need some sort of low end green in terms of, if it's just Bonnie, then it's just Bonnie, and then that's just 4 targets. But
It's
Momo
not
gets
enough
you,
value.
exactly, it's not enough. You have 8 targets that you can flip into a Nico Robin, into a Zoro, into a Luffy. It lets you flip easier into your well statted red cards. Maybe you might even look at that starter deck Zoro and you think, why is he there? But we'll get there. You can flip into him, and now you turn a card that said basically draw one and present a threat, as opposed to just presenting a threat, which is really, really nice, right? Then we got 4 of the Chopper. So why 4 Chopper as opposed to 4 Veggie?
Yeah, so a very common, and I think the most common line of play that this deck utilizes is that it'll always start the turn with 3 or 4 characters in play, ideally, and then it'll essentially play Namis that have been recycled during the course of the game. Nami, I think, is the most pivotal card in the whole deck, and you can, because you can Nami into the Trafalgar Law into a different 3 drop, and the Nami gets the 3 drops that you want to go into. So essentially, she completes that loop, because she's the red 1 drop. And when you're doing that, you want to facilitate a blocker that can be searched off of Nami, and that's obviously Chopper. So that's why Chopper over Reggie is very critical, is because Nami is the card that we loop the most out of all the other cards, and that's also why the Straw Hats are some of the higher counts in search targets.
So just to complement what you were saying, so as you were saying, you go Nami into leader ability to go into the 5 drop to then bounce a card and then play the card that Nami searched, right? That's the idea. But that would be the value centric form of it. We also have the offensive form of it, where we have the other red 1 drop, which is Otama, then bounce, then law, and then play something else, and then that's just the different things. So you really want those red 1 drops, and you really want to maximize on them in terms of Nami and Otama as they do something on play, and then you dip into the law, and then that lets you just oof. The amount of value is it's astronomical. It actually just breaks the computer. It's crazy. If you've ever done that play, it's unbelievable. And then we got 4 Usopp. So what's up with the Usopp? Because personally, 4 Usopp's interesting to me, but why are you on the 4 Usopp in this deck?
Yeah, so if you guys actually watched the first video in the series, which was the Mono Red deck, you know that I'm an Usopp enjoyer. Definitely love this card in the sense that he very much breaks the game in a way that other reg decks can't. He's one of the only card advantage engines in red, but he has a very high skill ceiling because you have to be able to read exactly when you can force your opponent to use event cards, and then force out those draws for yourself. And Usopp is a 2K guard most of the time. Honestly, he can also be recycled, put into play, recycled back to the hand for Trafalgar, etc., etc. But mainly, you just want to have a utility 2K guard, and I think that against the blue-purple matchup, and the blue matchups in general, which can be difficult in some scenarios, he honestly shores up a lot of the problems in those matchups. He can even single-handedly win the blue-purple matchup if you have multiples. So that's why he's my 2K of choice that can be searched with Nami.
No, certainly, certainly. I mean, I've seen a lot of people on Brook. There's even the tournament pack Luffy. Tournament pack Luffy ends up being a supernova straw hat, which is has some merit to it to just increase your consistency of supernovas and
Yeah.
things like that. But oftentimes that card really doesn't do much, especially if you don't play the 8 drop. I've noticed that the tournament pack Luffy, if you're not playing the 8 drop, it just gets cleared on the way back. Doesn't really have a lot of value. So I can
Yeah.
see the Usopp, which is mostly a 2K counter. You can put 1 Dawn on it, do your entire turn of damage, and then after they either choose to trigger or not trigger, then you flip it with your leader to go into law,
Yeah.
and then go into a defensive state. You go offense into defense, and then it's like, oh my gosh, like what an interesting and very strong deck, right? Then we have a 1 of Neko into 4 Izus, mostly because we want Wano cards that are easily searchable by Momo that allow us to interact with green as well as the mirror match, right? These are cards that are very, very strong in the mirror match. You need some assortment of them, but once you see 1 or 2 of them, you can start recycling them with your leader ability and definitely try to gain tempo. Definitely allows you to push through those games. And then Nico Robin is another very powerful straw hat. That is a card that you don't want to start with, but it's more the cards that you want to end with. One of the cards that you want to flip into or character law into, right? And then that adds bonus pressure. Instead of paying 3 to do nothing, you can like search minus DP, then flip into it, summon a blocker and her, and then it's like, whoa, now our cards are much, much more stronger. Maybe you want to take some damage and then go ahead and do that. Raizo, like Fernando was saying, helps with the value engine, but look at these Zoros. What is this 1-1 split of Zoro? What's going on here? Explain to me.
Yeah. So definitely the 3 drops are some of the more, I guess a lot of time went into selecting the ratios for the three drops, because the reason they're so important is they come off the five drop law, right? So you need to have really strong follow ups to what you flip off of that card, because he's your planning, he's your most powerful card in the deck, I would say, honestly. So when it comes to that, you wanted some assortment of Nikos because they control the board, Rises because they give you card advantage. But when it comes to the Zoros, the Rush Zoro lets you control the board in a way that no other card can, because it kind of defends itself. It's already the same strength as your leader, and it contests a lot of the other threats. For example, when you're going against mono red, blue, things like this. When they're summoning 5Ks against you, you need to proactively deal with them, and Zoro allows you to do that. The reason you play the other Zoro on the back end of that is because sometimes your opponent has unsuspended cards and you can't really get maximum value out of the Rush Zoro. So what you want to do is set up a turn where you have as much power on your side so that when they do their attack, you can counterattack. It's almost like a pseudo defensive card. It's especially good against blue because it hits a magic number 7 very easily with just one Dawn, and I think that it has a lot of merit in that sense. In this deck and a lot of law decks in general, the cards that they play don't normally defend themselves. Like normally they're just bullets. You attack with them once, they get their value, they die, or they force you to defend them. In this case, this Zoro actually defends itself because it becomes a 6K, the same as your Trafalgar laws. So it gives you a lot of board presence for, if you summon it off of law, only one mana essentially. So it's just really, really powerful.
No, it's insane. And it's also the fact that it is a supernova card that can be restood by the other starter deck law, right? So there are, I don't know if you guys if you've seen it by the time of this video, there was a championship that came out on the 14th in Japan, where there was a Trafalgar law deck that was playing multiples of the starter deck Zoro, and he was using that in combination with the starter deck law to push some crazy amount of damage. You put 3 Dawn under the Zoro in the law build, and now he goes into pretty crazy numbers, right? He goes into the 9 threshold for 3 Dawn,
Yeah,
and then you
which
tap
is
2.
insane.
Like, let's say you play a Nami after you go 9, then you bounce the Nami, play the Light, it's like 9/9, and it's just, whoa, that's a lot of damage. And also, you now have a 6K and a 6K on the board that are then going to turn sideways on their turn, and then you're going to flip them into your blocker law, and then you're just really going ham on your opponent. So I wanted to highlight that because that's one of the ideas and something that's really, really cool that's happening in the East. Obviously, that's happening because of a abundance of Whitebeard, but it also has merit in our meta as well. And then we have 3 of Yamato, 2 of the Supernova Luffy, and then I'm not going to mention the 4 laws. Like that card for sure is a 4 of them. We're not going to argue
Yeah,
that guy.
it's just too
But
crazy.
but the Yamato and the Luffy offer you some really interesting scenarios. Can you explain to me why we went on 3-2?
Yeah, so at a very fundamental level, the way that you deny your opponent some cards is by attacking with Banish, and Yamato's the only card in the green that can do that. But also, it essentially enables you to tax your opponent's hand so that you can set up this sort of like one punch with the Monkey D. Luffy 5 drop in combination with the 5 drop Law. You do this by putting, let's just say 3 Dawn on the Luffy. It can be blocked. You attack with it. You flip something else. Untap it with the law that you summon, and then go for like a 2/9 unblockable attack. And in small game states, that's normally good enough to get you there. And so Yamato kind of like lends itself to that game plan where it just takes so many cards to block, and the cards that answer the Yamato are then not there anymore to be able to answer the Zoros and the Luffy's of the deck. So very, very pivotal card.
No, just think about it, right? Your first couple turns, you're setting up a bunch of 1 drops, and then you flip your 1 drops into Nico Robins to gain board control. Then after you've gotten value off your Nico Robin, you flip the Robin into a Yamato, and it's just like, bro, what is going on? You know what I mean? Like, not only have I gained advantage, I've gained board control, and now I'm gaining hand advantage. So you literally have the 1-3-5 idea or the 2-4-6. And then not only that, you have the long game plan because they can never like try to outgrind you because your Momo and Bonnies and Namis in succession will outvalue them to the next dimension. But if they try to sit back between their big drop cards, Otama by itself destroys the 8 drop, and then the jet pistol fixes the Basil problem, and now we're just in a really good position to beat almost every single deck. So not only do we beat blue just because again outvaluing and we have a bigger hand size, we have better cards in general because we were using green in combination with red. We beat red by just outvaluing them. They're eventually hitting you in the face, giving you a humongous hand size. We destroy their board, and we get to the board states of now we have like 4 blockers, and then they really can't do much to us, and we're sitting behind a red hawk. But the biggest issue for this law deck, the one that we have found to be the most concerning, actually ends up being purple.
Yeah, for sure.
The category of its own, Kaido, shines once again and says, hey, by the way, I have really good cards, guys. Nice board you got there, 10 drop, the 7 drop in general in this matchup is very, very strong. The 7 drop king is something that we have to be cognizant of. Maybe when we know that they're going to 7, make sure that we are a little careful on what cards we leave on our board. What cards that we're okay with losing, kind of, is what we have to be okay with saying, right? Like, we don't want to lose a Nico Robin, perhaps. Maybe we do, depending on the board. So we definitely don't want to lose our 3-drop Zoro from the starter deck.
Yeah.
So we might not play the 3-drop Zoro into their 7-drop, right? We might not want to lose our Bonnies. We might be okay with losing maybe a Nami or an Otama. So we might want to play around those specific numbers, bait them to go to the 7, and then we can now be like, okay, now they've lost 2 Dawn. We have maybe 2 more turns before they get to 10. Let's establish again. Get value, and then when they go to the 10, they're going to be at such low life totals that we can then establish again and then win off of that. And that's generally the idea of the law deck, right? It's just a very high skill intensive deck that really, I know blue rewards people that play blue, but I think law really, really
It's the
rewards
highest
you.
skill ceiling, definitely.
Definitely.
I just want to say that basically the main differentiating factor between playing Law versus playing like a mono green variant with Kid is the inevitability that Kid brings you with its leader. And if you're someone who wants to have a better time against purple, expects a lot of purple at the cup, maybe something like a mono green would be better. But definitely, if what you're looking into is beating the red and the green matchups specifically, give yourself a little bit less of a win percentage against purple. Maybe it's a lot less represented, which I feel like green is going to be the most represented deck. If I had to make a guess right now, and some forms of blue maybe show up as well. So this has most of the matchups covered, and then if you can sneak out, the purple wins with a little bit of Usopp action or just proper searching at the right time. Maybe you just eke it out with a Monkey D. Luffy Exodia Punch at the end of the game. That's some of the ways that you can win that matchup. So
No,
just keep
certainly.
those things in mind.
Yeah, the 5-drop Luffy in combination with starter deck Law is another fantastic combo that we just didn't mention. But making an unblockable Luffy, put 3 Dawn under Luffy, swing for 9, and then restand it, swing for 9 again, and become completely unblockable is really, really nice. So I think like Fernando said, this deck really has a lot of matchups covered, but you just have to be a little bit more cognizant of how you play into purple. And again, if you want to put some play testing into this deck, play versus green, play versus purple, really understand those matchups in depth. And once you understand those, you can probably efficiently deal with red and blue likewise. And I think that's where Law is really, really going to shine in the cup. But besides that, do you have any closing statements you want to say about this deck?
So I very much would like people to overrepresent Law in the event because I think it's one of the highest skill ceiling decks, and I think it really rewards skill. And more than anything else, I want people to try to utilize, the 3 archetype build or something, close to it, because I feel like it has a lot of math to support it, and I like it a lot. So definitely, to all the Law enjoyers out there, I wish you the best of luck for sure.
No, certainly. I think that besides losing Fernando's camera, which is fine, I think he just had an overload of love for Law. And I do think it's a very, very good deck. It's beautiful to watch a good Law player. I think some of the game, when you see a good Law
It's
player
nice,
in
man.
action, you're just like, damn, that's nice. Just like when people saw a good Lilith
That
Queen
was a
player,
cool turn.
you're
Yeah,
like,
you,
damn,
you
that
get
turn
that
was
feel.
nuts. Like you'll see the turn, you'll be like, damn, that's big brain. Like that's the things I've just things I've heard in passing when people see like a really good Law turn. So I'm excited to see where people can push Law, if they can make Law better than this, because as as we stand, we think this is the best version of Law. But it certainly can be improved upon. The more brains are on it, I'm sure that we can get to a much a much better list, right? We aren't the Jimmy Neutrons of card games, but we try to analyze, put our time into it, and use our advantages as experienced card game players to give you guys the best information that we can. So with that, guys, I'm thinking we're going to wrap up this wonderful week of Road to Treasure Cup. Good luck to any of you guys participating in the cup, and I hope that you guys see the success that you poured the time into getting. Thank you, Fernando, for joining us. Fernando, do you
Yeah,
want to say anything to anyone watching this video?
No, I just want to thank you guys for joining us on this road, the road to the Treasure Cup. It was really fun to do this video and this series for all of you, and hopefully let you like this content enough to, like the video, subscribe, and if you want to see things like this in the future for like different major events coming up, just leave it in the comments. Make sure you give us feedback on everything that's you've seen during the course of the week. Check out all the other videos and just take care.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. And as always, guys, if you haven't joined the Pirate Crew and you're enjoying the content, I would really appreciate you guys subscribing. We're going to keep bringing out the best possible One Piece content that we can so you guys can improve along with us. So, as always, guys, thank you so much for enjoying, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace.
Bye.